Noswaith dda pawb, hello, and welcome to the Carlam Cymru revision session for English Literature A-Level. This evening, Miss Davis is going to be taking you through the Unit 4 Section A part of this paper, so it's the Shakespeare's extract. Obviously, if you have any questions at all, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A box at the top. There's also going to be a link to a Microsoft form for you to fill in. It's only if you want to give your details and for us to be able to get in contact with you about future events. Diolch yn fawr, Miss Davis. Thank you very much.
Hi, good evening, everyone. So as Ms. Hacker did just state, we are just going to be focusing on the extract section of the Unit 4 text. So again, although I may be referring to some specific texts, the skills and the approaches that we go through during the course of this evening, they're just things that should be applicable to any text that you do, although I am going to be focusing on possibly the two most popular texts that are out there, okay? So we'll have a think about the session outline. So we're going to have a little overview of what's sort of included in Section A, have a look at some examiner commentaries, so give you some feedback as to what examiners have said about past examination series, and again, have a think about the skills that are going to be needed, okay? So here you've got an overview that comes from the WJC specification. So where they say that in Section A, they will reward well-informed and well-organised responses, which are creatively engaged and make use of appropriate terminology. So they stipulate here the AO1, okay, aspect. So candidates will also need to demonstrate their analytical skills as they explore Shakespeare's use of language, imagery and literary devices. So there's your AO2. And the question gears you towards it. The Shakespeare extract question does gear you towards that idea of analysis. Okay, it forces you to consider the language and literary devices that are being employed throughout the course of the play and the extract specifically. So the following guidelines indicate where and how rewards can be earned and offer suggestions about the approaches the candidates may take. So if you have a look at the mark allocation, you can see that there's a total of 45 marks being allocated to the paper, 15 for AO1 and 30 for AO2. So notice the double weighting here for the AO2 section, and that's your analytical skills. That's the way in which you will explore the devices that are being used, okay? So this is what the front of your examination paper will look like. So you're being advised to answer one question in Section A and one question in Section B. The same Shakespeare play must be chosen for Section A and Section B, and then you write your answers in an answer booklet that will be provided to you on the day of the exam. So Section A, like I've just said, it carries 45 marks. Section B is weighted at 75. And they advise you to spend around 45 minutes on Section A and an hour and 50 minutes on Section B. Okay. So here's some commentary. Okay, so a couple of things that we could maybe consider. So the fact that the WJC state that they were quite concerned about the quality of written expression at this particular level. Candidates who write very long one-sentence paragraphs risk losing their focus, and it seemed to be quite prominent. There was also a trend away from the academic style and register, which needs to be corrected, a little bit too chatty, a little bit too informal. Many responses in the last couple of examination series to the extract featured writing out large chunks of the extract for textual support instead of brief quotations. And consequently, there was very much a lack of discussion or comment, and too many candidate scripts featured a page after page of random comments with no real structure, as if they were just attempting to fill their examination booklets, okay? And here you've got something which I'm hoping you'd be quite familiar with by now. So just the grid for the extract section. So if you look at, again, if you remind yourselves the weighting of 15 marks for AO1 and 30 for AO2, one thing I want to draw your attention to is that in every aspect, whether you're in band 1 or whether you're in band 5, there is this comment on dramatic techniques, dramatic features, okay? So we have to remember that we are approaching this as a drama rather than as a written sort of prose text, okay? So how do playwrights use setting is something that we need to focus on. How do playwrights use dramatic irony, quite possibly, you could look at. How they use stagecraft, what makes a play powerful and dramatic as well. And you could also consider how the characters are being portrayed as well, okay? What is setting? So we'll just briefly go through a few things that you may pick up on in your exam, okay? Things that you may be able to see from the extract. It could be in the form of stage directions, quite possibly. It could be through description that you see, but things that you can pick up on that may allow you to kind of answer the question a little bit more, okay? So setting is where and when a story or a scene takes place. So the where can be a real place or can be an imagined location, and the when can be a real time period or imagined, okay? And there's other things that determine settings, such as time of day, social context, weather, etc. Sometimes called the scene or a sense of place. The setting of the piece of literature often shapes the main events, the motivations of the character. You know, there's this scene in, if say those of you who are familiar with Hamlet, for example, Hamlet's final soliloquy, Act 4, Scene 4. What you've got is him in this, and stage direction state he's on a desolate plain, so this kind of vast open wasteland. And if you're thinking of the type of question you could possibly have if you're being asked to analyse that soliloquy, analyse kind of his sort of the way in which he's being presented by Shakespeare here, you could look at the fact that he is isolated physically, and therefore does that show his isolation as the character and the way in which Shakespeare is trying to present him. So you can often make some associations, you can often make some quite subtle links between where the play is being set or how it's being set, and also the character that's being presented. It's like I said, there's the idea of the physical location, the time, what's going on in the social world around them, and then obviously it could be, there could be like change in setting, it could be as a result of political change, it could be as a result of weather, construction, etc. Okay, so I have stated here, so in Hamlet, for example, so in literature, setting refers to the various locations where the story's action unfolds, and it can often be as important as the plot and the characters themselves. So Hamlet's primary setting is Elsinore Castle, but the play is also set at a pivotal moment in history. So looking at the social side as well as the actual place here, as the medieval and Renaissance periods transition into the modern era. So here, when we meet Hamlet as a young man who wants to resume his life studying with his friends at the University of Wittenberg, Germany, Hamlet's mother, Queen Gertrude, manages to kind of guilt trip him into remaining at Elsinore for a while longer. Even though to Hamlet, Elsinore is not a castle, he dubs it a prison. At Elsinore, Hamlet has no choice but to remember who he is, not merely a prince, but also a subject of King Claudius, from whom loyalty is not expected but required. So you get a sense of setting from that aspect. And if, say, for example, you're a bit more familiar with the play The Tempest, what we find is he sets the play in a far-off, isolated island. Whether he intended the setting to symbolise a new world is quite arguable, but it certainly resembles it. So similar to America, it's wild, it's undeveloped, with strange sights, sounds and creatures. There's this colonial overseer, Prospero, who exploits the native population. You've got the savage beast man, so Caliban, and the sprite Ariel. And these are turned into servants or slaves. Prospero's daughter Miranda has got no concept and knows no other world but her father's island. So in this respect, you could make the comparison that she's like a real-life Virginia Dare, the first English child born in the Americas, off the coast of present-day North Carolina. So that's where kind of the setting can kind of come into play to allow you to have that understanding of character. So another technique that you may be able to pick up on is the use of dramatic irony. And it's where the reader or the audience knows something about the present or future circumstances that the character on stage doesn't know about. possibly one of the most effective items and techniques that a dramatist can potentially use, found in films, for example, novels, plays, and the device is used intentionally in order to create some sort of unusual or conflicting meanings, sometimes in the speeches of characters. It's such a useful plot device, and the writers use this dramatic irony to create and sustain the audience's interest. So when I'm telling you, you need to consider it as a drama, I need to think about dramatic techniques. Dramatic irony is most definitely there. If you talk about it as this plot device, if you talk about it as a device which allows for that connection with the audience and the audience interaction, you're showing the examiner then that you're considering the play, the text as a play, aren't you? Stagecraft then, the technical aspect that you may want to refer to if there's anything in there that's kind of relevant, if there's certain lighting that's being used, any sort of facets that you feel kind of bring the performance to life, anything that kind of impacts feelings and the mood of the audience. Stagecraft, you've also got things like lighting, like I just slightly mentioned there, the theatre lighting, and the way in which the writing is used in order to have an impact on an audience. Sometimes what you find is the first impression of a character is given by the costume that's worn by the actor, and the costume that is being worn often denotes the style of dress. It could link to a nation, a class, a certain time period or personality. So the costume design process involves multiple steps, and it's all about bringing about that rich visual sort of context as well. Other things that we can't neglect are things like theatrical property, so the props that are being used, so the hand props or the personal props. Another aspect that we need to make sure that we are considering is the use of sound and the impact that the sound has with regards to context and atmosphere, and the fact that the use of sound is so vital in setting the mood and immersing the spectator, so immersing the audience. So again, if you did have an extract question put in front of you where there is stage directions noting something about maybe thunder and lightning, it would be absolutely vital for you to consider the impact of that. You'd have to be looking at the idea of pathetic fallacy, the use of the atmospheric kind of feeling and how it evokes certain emotions. The use of illusion, then it could be a reference to a person, a place, a specific event. It could link to religion, mythology, history, legends, geography, places, other literary works. And the purpose of it is to establish some sort of a tone, to create some sort of applied association, to put some contrast in, and just to show that, to kind of maybe draw the reader into their world a little bit more in the play in which they've created. Another couple of things like terms that you should be mindful of when we are analysing the extract. So is there use of a monologue? Is it a use of soliloquy? The question isn't going to state that it is a soliloquy. You're going to have to be able to spot that. You know, as you know, this year, you will have been given some advance information as to where the extract is coming from your given texts. So whether it's, say, Act 4, for example, Hamlet comes from Act 4. So it would be an idea for you to make sure that you have a chat with your teacher, if you haven't done so already, or if you're not aware of this information already, and see if they're able to give you the information as to where your specific text extract is coming from. And what the WJC have done is they've given you a designated act from the play so that you're kind of more familiar with it. So there would be that expectation for you to identify whether or not it's a soliloquy, whether or not it's a monologue. All right. And also looking at the purpose of the device. So if you're saying that Hamlet uses soliloquy, great, but what impact does that have? It's a dramatic device. It's a very effective dramatic device. and it allows for a character to convey quite intimate thoughts and feelings directly to the audience. What we find is that the empathy that a character has, that an audience has for a specific character, is often heightened through the use of soliloquy. Shakespeare uses them quite liberally, and some of his finest piece of writing in this form, for example, the very famous To Be or Not to Be soliloquy in Hamlet. Another aspect that you could be picking up on in your extract tasks is the use of symbolism. So as you probably are aware of, symbolism, or the symbol, can bring about greater meaning than most literal suggestions, and can be used to represent something different than what you'll see at face value. So it can be used through colour, movement, characters, props, costumes, etc. Okay. It's a device in which an object, person, or situation is essentially given another meaning beyond its literal one. Usually it's something more abstract or non-rational than the symbol itself. And what you find is that sometimes dramatists kind of weave clues into their work to indicate that certain elements are intended to be taken as symbolic. Okay, so what you've got here are the sort of use of colours with regards to symbolism. So you've got here red, the idea of rage, passion, anger, desire, so things that you'd possibly be quite mindful of already. The idea of knowledge and wisdom linked to the colour of yellow, green. You may already be thinking of like the sort of idea of like youth, quite possibly linked to that. With some of the other colours, so like black, you probably be familiar with like the sadness, evil, and then silver, you've got the idea of things which are glamorous, rich, sleek, and then obviously gold, the idea of extravagance and wealth, things which are prosperous and grand. Okay, so the fact that the colours, they have some sort of symbolic meaning as well. Obviously as well, throughout the extract, you're going to be asked to examine how Shakespeare presents a certain character or certain characters. Characterization, it's a process of producing a character through typifying its actions, words and thoughts. Character development is an important part of the text, and each character has a function or a need. Okay, it's important to consider the thoughts and the words of every character, as that will help you to sort of understand them a little bit better. So we'll have a look now at this idea of reading extracts in a little bit more depth. So the first stage is going to be actually reading. All right, so it's kind of broken down into how you should approach it. So you should be aware of, or you can make yourself aware of your personal reading speed before the examination, so you'll know around how much comes up in an extract question, as in text wise, in order to know, right, how long is it going to take me to read it. Obviously, reading Shakespeare is a little bit different, a little bit more complex than reading a prose text. So throughout, you need to make sure that you keep your attention firmly focused on the text, and not to worry so much initially about how you're going to be writing. Your interpretation is what's important here. This is where you're just engaging with the main characteristics of this extract, okay, as in the tone, the characterization, what is going on, okay. This is what you need to think about initially. And then the reflection and annotation. So you've looked at what was in the extract, and now you've got to look at the how. Okay, so how, examine how is what we're looking at now. So here you need to make sure that you're remaining focused on whatever the given question is. You've got to make sure that your annotations are purposeful and that they allow you to actually answer the demands of the question, and that they're not vague and they're not generalized, and that they keep you on the right track. So we're going to have a look at this particular extract. Okay, so this is an extract from Hamlet, and don't forget that the extract question, it's asking you to analyse how meanings are shaped in drama text. Okay, it's encouraging you to use, if you look at the question, a range of literary ideas, okay, through and terminology through this idea of language and imagery in the extract. Okay, it wants you to include knowledge of the principles and the conventions of drama as well. So not forgetting that we are trying to treat this as a play. So we need to be thinking about how attitudes and values are expressed in the text. We need to make sure that we organise our responses in a clear and effective academic style. So no chatty language, no informal. We need to make sure we've got that tone, the correct tone there, and that we use accurate and relevant textual support. If you remember back to the examiner commentary that I noted right at the start, the idea that long quotations aren't necessary. We can just look at individual words and phrases. Okay, so have a quick read of this extract, or a few bits of it. Okay, so here we've got the characters of Guildenstern, Rosencrantz and Hamlet, who are having a discussion, and what's happening really here is what we've got is Hamlet interrogating Guildenstern and Rosencrantz as he's a little bit suspicious of the pair. So as an audience, we know at this point that the pair have been sent for by Claudius in order to try and find out from Hamlet what's kind of troubling him. Okay, so Guildenstern opens with, "What should we say, my lord? Why anything but to the purpose you were sent for, and there is a kind of confession in your looks, which your modesties have not craft enough to colour. I know the good king and queen have sent you." So opens here with the idea of why anything but to the purpose you were sent for. As in, he wants the truth, is what Hamlet is stating here. Okay, and if you look at the wording choice here, you've got the word of confession, you've got the choice of word craft here, and this is what we'd call maybe kind of language of deception. Okay, language of deception. All right, so this idea that the language choice, where he's talking about confession and craft, the idea that things are a little bit too devious, and he makes it quite clear what his thoughts are. I know the good king and queen have sent for you. But notice how this is still quite friendly. It's, you know, he's not shouting, he's not questioning here. And then Rosencrantz asks, to what extent, or to what end, my lord, that you must teach me, but let me conjure you by the rights of our fellowship. So the fellowship here he's talking about is their friendship. By the constancy of our youth, by the obligation of our ever-preserved love, by what more, dear, a better proposer can charge you withal, be even and direct with me, whether you were sent for or no. So there's this kind of colloquial rhythm of exchange between Rosencrantz and Guildenstern and Hamlet, and it reflects kind of their relationship, or his relationship with the two. And it shows that despite being sort of suspicious, that, like, with regards to the fact that he thinks that they may be spies for Claudius, there is still this kind of friendliness being presented. But towards the end of that particular section, where he states, be even and direct with me, there's some real assertiveness here, assertive language choices. Okay, assertive language choices. His authority is being shown in those assertive language choices. Be even and direct with me. There's a sense of command being presented there. Okay, Rosencrantz then says, aside to Guildenstern, and again, if you were answering this in an exam, okay, you're looking at the idea of asides. What is the purpose of that? And then you've got Hamlet with an aside. Nay then, I have an eye of you. If you love me, hold not off. So the pair of them are talking away from one another. All right, there's this sense of sarcasm and sort of banter going on here between the pair. And then he continues with, "My lord, we were sent for." And then Hamlet responds with, "I will tell you why. So shall my anticipation prevent your discovery and your secrecy to the king and queen molten and feather. I have of late, but wherefore I know not, lost all my mirth, forgone all custom of exercises. And indeed it goes so heavily with my disposition, this goodly frame, the earth, seems to me a sterile promontory. This most excellent canopy, the air, look you, this brave overhanging firmament, this majestical root fretted with golden fire. Why, it appeareth no other thing to me than a foul and pestilent congregation of vapours. What of piece of work is man? How noble in reason, how infinite in faculties, in form and moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god the beauty of the world, the paragon of animals. And yet, to me, what is this quintessence of dust? Man delights not me. No, nor woman neither, though by your smiling you seem to say so." So one thing that you'd be kind of maybe drawn to here would be that repeated use of the exclamative throughout here. Okay, there's multiple use here of the exclamative, and it shows this sense of exaggeration. Okay, the repeated exclamative shows a sense of exaggeration in his approach here. You've got these kind of contrasted ideas with goodly, sterile, majestical, pestilent, paragon, quintessence of dust. Okay, but note still his tone. Hamlet's tone throughout this is quite playful. Okay, he is mocking, he is taunting, and he is being sarcastic. All right, and the fact that the entire extract is written in prose suggests this sort of spirited side to Hamlet, and it suggests this kind of sense of mischief about him, which is echoed possibly in that last sentence here, "though by your smiling you seem to say so." Okay, there's no anger being really expressed here. He is suspicious of the pair, but he's still trying to maintain this idea of lightheartedness. So we'll have a quick look at an example answer to this question. Okay, so in this extract, Shakespeare presents Hamlet as an intelligent, hostile prince who is in the peak of his madness. He does this in probing conversation with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern. His madness exhibited through his use of prose in his soliloquy, which was typically reserved for characters of lower class or for fools. Firstly, we immediately get the impression at the start of this extract that Hamlet is an extremely perceptive individual who's aware of Rosencrantz and Guildenstern's ulterior motives. He claims that there is a kind of confession in your looks. His use of the colloquial kind of failing to hinder the weight of the accusation, which he gives his former friends with a noun confession. He continues to outline his own intelligence by insulting theirs, adding that they have not craft enough to colour. The use of the verb craft conjures the idea of these characters being cunning and sly due to the association with the word crafty. Hence, Hamlet is reputing their futile attempts at being sly. Okay, so we're thinking here as an examiner, right, big tick there, AO1, okay, really secure knowledge and understanding being shown. And here, when we're thinking about the analysis, AO2, you've got very sound analysis, okay, grasp of implicit meaning being shown. Okay, so grasp the implicit meaning as well. Continues then, the use of the verb, the use of the verb to colour could implicate that their intelligence, pale to his own, as his apt understanding of their mission to spy on him trumps their effects to even begin such a task. You'd look at the quite sound and accurate reading here for AO1, okay, totally, entirely engaged with the extract, okay, this particular candidate. And even where he was looking here at the futile attempts at being sly. Again, you've got that AO1 coming through, using the AO2, secure knowledge, secure understanding being shown. Additionally, Shakespeare presents Hamlet as a rather manipulative man at this stage of the play, as he loses his status as a prince to exert his superiority over Rosencrantz and Guildenstern, in addition to using their friendship as a tool to make them confess. He orders that they all tell the truth by the obligation of our ever-presented love. So the use of the noun obligation demonstrates how he is not permitting his former friends to escape their imminent confession. The pre-modifying adjective ever preserved, perhaps demonstrating his dominance and control of the situation. So really perceptive here, okay? This analysis, really perceptive and really confident. Okay, when we're thinking of that grid that we're looking at the top of sort of 4 or 5 here at this point. All right, working your way up that grid. As he could be being sarcastic, he continues to say, if you love me, manipulating them into betraying the king's commands because of their bond. Finally, this extract is important, his portrayal of Hamlet's madness. So here he is presented as a babbling pessimist of the human race. He exclaims, what a piece of work is man. The use of the exclamatory after man, emphasizing his profound disapproval of humanity. Again, we'll be thinking of the way in which he's going about this, very perceptive. Okay, AO2. So again, perceptive and confident analysis. Okay, so perceptive commentary here. Right, and then continues with, this presents him as deranged due to the untimely and ultimately random nature of this rant, which comes after he hears the truth about them spying. Here he is sarcastically praising the wondrous creature that is a human, simply to emphasize his conclusion at the end of the soliloquy, that man delights not me. He is openly and firmly expressing his distaste with the verb delights, as this verb connotes a childlike pleasure that he distances himself from. So again, continues here with the focus on the word delights, okay, and the fact that it's a verb choice. Look at the close analysis of language. So using a short phrase of man delights not me, 4 words, then picks up that individual word of delights and looks at the impact of that. As this verb connotes a childlike pleasure that he distances himself from. Perhaps he is comparing everyone who celebrates the achievements of man to an ignorant child in blind glee, whilst he himself has the only added wisdom to perceive the true dark nature of humanity, that he reduces to a quintessence of dust. The noun dust, deployed simply to convey how worthless he regards humanity as being. Okay, very confident, very thoughtful reading being presented here. So in an examination, this would have achieved a split mark of 13 out of 15 for AO1, and it would have had 25 out of 30, so a total of 38 out of 45 for that part of the paper. Okay, so we're going to have a quick look now at an extract from King Lear. Again, if you look at the question focus with close reference to the language and imagery in this extract, analyse Shakespeare's presentation of Lear and Goneril at this point in the play. So you're trying to focus on 2 characters here. So a little bit more complicated, a little bit more focused, a little bit more work needs to be done here. As you read through this particular extract, what will be evident is the conflict between father and daughter here. What becomes quite clear right from the outset is the fact that Goneril is evidently in control, and there's this presentation of Lear as this almost kind of difficult house guest. Okay, so it begins with your name, fair gentlewoman. This admiration, sir, is much of the savour of other your new pranks. I do beseech you to understand my purposes aright. As you are old and reverend, should be wise. Here do you keep 100 knights and squires, men so disordered, so debauched and bold, that this our court, infected with their manners, shows like a riotous inn, epicurism and lust make it more like a tavern or a brothel than a graced place. The shame itself does speak for instant remedy. Be then desired by her that else will take the thing she begs, a little to disquantity or train, and the remainders shall still depend to be such men as may besort your age, which know themselves and you. So she is careful here, Gonril, at the opening, if you have a look at that section, here with beseech you, okay? Careful to appear to be asking rather than ordering him, okay? So very clever, very intelligent approach from her, okay? And then if you notice then, you've got words such as pranks being used, disordered, debauched, you've got riotous, epicurism, lust, tavern, brothel, okay? So there's quite emotive language choices here, because the language choices that she's making in this particular section, they reflect her disdain, they reflect her contempt, and it clearly shows her disapproval. So the way in which they're being presented and the choice of words here definitely show the fact that reflect the fact that she disapproves of his actions. And her control is very cleverly reflected by the use or Shakespeare's way in which he employs this transactional language. So you've got things like here, instant remedy, that could be looked at, disquantity, your train. So those words sort of show her control as well. So continues with darkness and devils, saddle my horses, call my train together, degenerate bastard, I'll not trouble thee. You have, yet have I left a daughter. So you've got the use of saddle my horses, call my train together. Leah's angry reaction here is shown with saddle my horses, call my train. Leah's angry reaction is expressed through those imperative verb choices, okay? He's ordering his servants to leave. He's engaging with them. He wants them to leave. And that exclamative here of darkness and devils, okay? Really harsh plosive sounds being used there. And they kind of evoke this imagery, this dark imagery as well, all right? So throughout this, we've got some real conflict being presented. Gonril then says, you strike my people and your disordered rabble make servants of their betters. And then at that point then Albany enters. And Leah then continues with, woe that too late repents. Oh sir, are you come? Is it your will? Speak sir, prepare my horses. Again, that idea of his angry reaction being shown through the imperative here of prepare my horses. Ingratitude, thou marble-hearted fiend, more hideous when thou showest thee in a child than the sea monster. Pray, sir, be patient. And then he continues then to Goneril, detested kite, thou liest. So you've got this idea of quite a natural behaviour shown through those dark imagery choices. So you've got things like where he says, marble-hearted fiend here. You've got sea monster. You've got detested kite. All of those words, okay, show this idea of quite dark imagery choices and a natural behaviour, okay? And then towards the end, Leah seems to start to recognise his ill treatment of his other daughter, of Cordelia. So he continues with, so detested kite, thou liest, my train are men of choice and rarest parts, that all particulars of duty know, and in the most exact regard support the worships of their name. O most small fault, how ugly didst thou in Cordelia show, which like an engine wrenched my name of nature from the fixed place, drew from my heart all love and added to the gall. Oh, Leah, Leah, Leah. So like I said, there's a sense of recognition of that ill treatment of Cordelia, and there's a clear sense that he has made a mistake, and that's emphasised by words such as small fault, and you can also look at the idea of ugly as well, where he says, how ugly dost thou in Cordelia show? All right. So again, we're going to quickly look at another example. All right. So we'll have a quick look at another example answer. So firstly, we see Goneril represented as somewhat respectful and considerate towards her father. She states, I do beseech you to understand my purposes. The use of en jambon after beseech you suggests Goneril may be pleading with Leah to understand her intentions. It suggests a softer aspect of Goneril's character with focus on my purposes, forcing Leah to see how his actions are affecting someone else. However, Goneril is swiftly reverted back to a disrespectful daughter whom ignores correct social convention when addressing Leah as her king. She labels him old and reverend rather than what he should be, which is wise. So here, some nice, clear support, okay? So AO2 here, clear support. The lexical set of agents seems to ridicule Leah and promotes Goneril as disrespectful in her language towards Leah. As her king, you could expect a level of respect towards him, but using the metaphor that Leah should be wise emulates an idea that Leah is not adequate in his role in society and his age has weakened him. So you've got quite purposeful analysis here. So purposeful AO2, okay, and some sensible commentary going on here, okay, so sensible, all right. And if you had the grid side by side, you'd be able to slot these into a band 3 sort of response at this point, okay. So Goneril seems to be to take a role of authority and is presented as overly and incorrectly authoritative. She discusses Leah's riotous knights who have turned her home into somewhat like a tavern or a brothel. Use of violent imagery and riotous forces Leah to see the harm she claims her knights are causing. This shows Goneril's manipulative nature, as her over-exaggeration of Leah's knights is her reasoning for wanting to dismiss some of Leah's knights, which in turn reduces Leah's power. A lexical set of depravity in tavern and brothel propel the idea of Leah's knights' behaviour being unacceptable and causing much strife. Goneril uses the metaphor to draw a comparison between Leah's knights' actions and the way men who frequent such places behave. So again, you've got really detailed analysis, okay, AO2, some nice detailed analysis being presented. Okay. After Goneril's speech, Leah is shown to be in severe disbelief and upset of her accusations, and then continues. But here, the use of a devil comparison is highly offensive and upsetting. Again, clear analysis of Shakespeare's language choices here, and then continues with Leah further labels Goneril a degenerate bastard, which was highly offensive and vicious. Leah shows outrage in his daughter's treatment of him and is seemingly acting of spite from Goneril's behaviour. Again, we get a sense that this particular candidate is engaged, clearly engaged with the extract, okay? So clearly engaged, so again, looking at your AO1. Okay? And then continues with this idea looking at the use of the exaggeration with the sea monster, and more use of focus on bearing a child who was hideous. So look at the close textual analysis. So individual words and phrases that are being focused on and are being fully analysed. So purposeful is what we'd call that. Purposeful analysis, clear support. All right, that is a really good example of how to go about it. Leah is also shown, here we're looking at here, Leah is also shown as authoritative and an audience is reminded of his kingship, nice awareness of the audience. He states that his knights are men of choice, that all particulars are duly known. This idea of choice seems to be Leah's greatest frustration, given he may feel that that is what Goneril is attempting to control. Again, nicely engaged, some nice control being shown here, okay, with regards to the AO1. Engaged and coherent and in control. Ends then the use of the adjective duty reinstates a noble and respectful view of Leah's knights in the audience's mind rather than Goneril's unprofessional and righteous depiction. So constantly goes back to the idea of Goneril and Leah, okay? And this is very much a consistent band 3 response with 9 for AO1, 18 for AO5, given a total of 27 out of 45. So consistent band 3 response. The candidate throughout is clearly engaged with the extract, chooses nice quotations from the text, and offers that quite purposeful analysis. Okay, so what you've got there are 2 examples ranging from a bottom of 5 to a mid 3, a good consistent 3, to give you an idea of what the expectations are. So as I said, regardless of whether your text is Hamlet, Tempest, Lear, the structure is what we're looking at, the approach is what we're looking at, okay? At the end of this presentation, you've got a few things like revision for literary terms, so you can go through them in your own time. And it would be maybe an idea task-wise, if you're looking for something to do in order sort of to prepare yourself for the examination, have a think about this particular answer and think about, right, how can we get that AO1 up? How can we get that AO2 up? Where could we go with the analysis to make it maybe sound analysis? Okay, so maybe think about how could we tweak it? So some tasks you could do independently in preparation for your external exam. So in next week's session, we're going to go through section B of the Shakespeare paper. So we'll be looking at, again, the techniques of the drama that's needed, but more than anything, looking at some example responses and the engagement that's needed in order to go through it, looking at the assessment objectives in a bit more depth. Thank you very much for your time this evening. I hope that's been useful. Back to you, Miss Hacker.
Diolch yn fawr, Miss Davies. Thank you very much, everybody, for attending this evening. If you have any questions, again, please don't hesitate to put them in the Q&A section. Some fantastic resources there. So please get in touch if you need anything. And thank you. See you next week.